The Kouprey Bos sauveli, a majestic symbol of Southeast Asian wildlife. Note, while this article explores the Kouprey as requested, it's important to clarify that the Kouprey is actually the national animal of Cambodia, not Thailand. Thailand's national animal is the Asian elephant. In the dense forests and grassland of Southeast Asia, once roamed one of the world's most mysterious and magnificent creatures, the Kouprey Bos sauveli. This wild ox, known locally as Kouprey, meaning forest ox in Khmer, represents not just a species, but a symbol of the untamed wilderness that once flourished across the region. Today, the Kouprey holds a distinguished title of Cambodia's national mammal, though its current existence remains one of conservation biology's most pressing mysteries. Discovery and scientific recognition. The Kouprey's journey into scientific recognition began relatively recently in zoological terms. It was first described by French zoologist Achille Urbain in 1937, making it one of the last large mammals to be formally classified by Western science. This late discovery speaks to both the remote nature of the Kouprey's habitat and the limited scientific exploration of Southeast Asian forests during the early 20th century. The species was initially identified from specimens obtained in Cambodia, where local populations had long known of its existence. Indigenous communities had observed and occasionally hunted these impressive bovids for generations, though their elusive nature and preference for dense forest habitats made encounters relatively rare even then. Urbain's description was based on careful examination of physical specimens, noting the distinctive characteristics that set the Kouprey apart from other wild cattle species in the region. The scientific name sauveli honors René Sauvel, a French veterinarian who played a crucial role in bringing the species to scientific attention. Physical characteristics and appearance. The Kouprey stands as one of nature's most impressive wild cattle, exhibiting sexual dimorphism that creates striking differences between males and females. Adult males reach impressive dimensions, standing 5.6 to 6.2 feet tall at the shoulder and measuring 6.9 to 7.5 feet in body length. These magnificent bulls can weigh between 1,500 to 2,100 pounds, making them formidable presences in their forest habitats. Males display a dark brown to black coloration that deepens with age, creating an imposing silhouette against the dappled light of forest clearings. Their most distinctive feature is perhaps their impressive horns, which grow in a distinctive lyre shape, curving upward and slightly inward. These horns serve multiple purposes, establishing dominance hierarchies, defending against predators, and competing for mating rights. Female Koupreys present a markedly different appearance, reflecting the species' pronounced sexual dimorphism. Cows are notably smaller than bulls, typically weighing considerably less and displaying a lighter, more grayish-brown coloration. This lighter coloring may serve as camouflage when caring for young in forest environments, helping them blend with sun-dappled forest floors and understory vegetation. Both sexes possess the characteristic muscular build of wild cattle, with powerful shoulders and sturdy legs adapted for navigating dense forest terrain. Their hooves are well suited for both firm ground and softer forest floor conditions, allowing them to move efficiently through their varied habitat types. The Kouprey's coat varies seasonally, becoming slightly lighter during dry periods and darker during the wet season. This seasonal variation may help with thermoregulation and camouflage as forest conditions change throughout the year. Historical range and habitat. Historically, the Kouprey inhabited a range that extended across several Southeast Asian countries, including Cambodia, southern Vietnam, eastern Thailand, and parts of Laos. Archaeological evidence suggests that their range may have once been even more extensive, with fossil remains indicating their presence in central China during prehistoric times. The species showed a strong preference for mixed habitats that combined open grasslands with dense forest areas. This habitat preference reflects their feeding needs and behavioral patterns, requiring open areas for grazing while depending on forest cover for shelter and protection from both predators and human activities. Kouprey populations favored areas where deciduous forests met grassland savannas, creating edge environments rich in the diverse vegetation they required. These transitional zones, known as ecotones, typically support higher biodiversity and provide the varied resources that large herbivores need throughout different seasons. The species was particularly associated with the vast grass plains and scattered forest patches of Cambodia's northern and eastern provinces, where the landscape provided ideal conditions for their lifestyle. The Mondulkiri and Ratnakiri provinces of Cambodia were considered strongholds of the species, offering expansive grasslands interspersed with gallery forests along river systems. Water sources played a crucial role in determining Kouprey distribution, as these large mammals required regular access to fresh water for drinking and wallowing. River systems and seasonal wetlands therefore form critical components of their habitat requirements. Behavior and social structure. The Kouprey exhibited fascinating social behaviors that reflected their adaptation to life in Southeast Asian forests and grasslands. Like many wild cattle species, they lived in small herds with complex social dynamics that varied according to season, resource availability, and breeding cycles. Typical herd composition included several adult females with their offspring, led by a dominant male during breeding seasons. Outside of breeding periods, mature bulls often lived solitary lives or formed small bachelor groups, rejoining female herds only when mating opportunities arose. The species demonstrated notable intelligence in their foraging strategies, showing seasonal migration patterns that followed resource availability. During dry seasons, herds would concentrate near permanent water sources, while the wet season allowed for more dispersed ranging across their territory. Kouprey communication involved a variety of vocalizations, body language, and scent marking behaviors. Bulls established territory through horns scraping on trees and vegetation, leaving both visual and olfactory signals for other individuals. During the breeding season, vocal communications became more frequent, with bulls producing low-frequency calls that could travel considerable distances through forest environments. The species showed remarkable wariness around human activities, which may have been both an adaptation to natural predators and a learned response to hunting pressure. This extreme caution contributed to their elusive reputation and made scientific study extremely challenging. Diet and feeding ecology. As herbivores, Koupreys played important ecological roles as primary consumers in their grassland and forest edge habitats. Their diet consisted primarily of grasses, young shoots, leaves, and occasionally fruits, making them mixed feeders that could adapt their consumption patterns to seasonal availability. During the wet season, when grasses were abundant and nutritious, Koupreys spent considerable time grazing in open areas. Their feeding pattern typically involved early morning and late afternoon grazing sessions, with midday rest periods spent in shaded forest areas to avoid heat stress. The dry season necessitated dietary adjustments, with increased browsing on leaves, shoots, and bark from trees and shrubs. This seasonal flexibility in diet was crucial for survival in environments where resource availability could vary dramatically between wet and dry periods. Kouprey feeding behavior had significant ecological impacts, contributing to seed dispersal through their dung and helping maintain grassland ecosystems through their grazing patterns. Like other large herbivores, they served as ecosystem engineers, influencing plant community composition and structure through their selective feeding. Their preference for young, tender vegetation meant they often created favorable conditions for other herbivore species by stimulating new plant growth through their grazing activities. This facilitated coexistence with other herbivores in their shared habitats. Cultural significance and national symbol status. The elevation of the Kouprey to national animal status reflects its deep cultural significance in Cambodian society. In 1964, Prince Sihanouk of Cambodia declared the Kouprey the national animal, recognizing both its uniqueness to the region and its symbolic importance. This designation was later formalized in 2005 when the Kouprey was officially defined as Cambodia's national mammal. The choice of the Kouprey as a national symbol carries profound meaning, representing the wild, untamed nature of Cambodia's forests and the country's unique biodiversity. In Khmer culture, the forest ox embodies strength, independence, and connection to the natural world, qualities that resonate deeply with national identity. Traditional Cambodian folklore includes references to wild cattle, and the Kouprey's mysterious nature has inspired local legends and stories. Some communities viewed these animals as spirits of the forest, deserving respect and protection rather than exploitation. The Kouprey's image has appeared on Cambodian currency, stamps, and official documents, cementing its place in the nation's visual identity. This symbolic use helps maintain cultural awareness of the species even as its physical presence has diminished. Educational programs in Cambodia have used the Kouprey as a flagship species for conservation awareness, teaching citizens about the importance of protecting native wildlife and habitats. The species serves as an ambassador for broader conservation efforts across Southeast Asia. Conservation crisis and decline. The Kouprey's conservation story represents one of the most urgent and challenging cases in modern wildlife protection. The species is currently listed as critically endangered by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, ICN, with a devastating possibility that it may already be extinct in the wild. The last confirmed sighting of a wild Kouprey occurred in 1969, marking the beginning of nearly 6 decades without verified evidence of the species' continued existence. This absence of confirmed sightings has led many conservationists to fear that the Kouprey may have joined the growing list of species lost to extinction. Multiple factors contributed to the Kouprey's precipitous decline. Habitat destruction through deforestation and agricultural expansion eliminated crucial forest and grassland habitats. The conversion of natural ecosystems to farmland and human settlements fragmented remaining populations and reduced available resources. Hunting pressure intensified throughout the 20th century as improved weapons and increased human populations in rural areas made encounters with Koupreys more likely to result in killing. The species' large size made them attractive targets for both subsistence hunting and commercial meat trade. The prolonged period of conflict in Southeast Asia during the latter half of the 20th century had devastating impacts on wildlife populations, including the Kouprey. Military activities, unexploded ordnance, and the breakdown of conservation enforcement during wartime created additional pressures on already vulnerable populations. Climate change and altered precipitation patterns have further modified the grassland and forest habitats that Koupreys require, potentially making remaining areas less suitable for their survival needs. Conservation efforts and protection measures. Despite the grim outlook for Kouprey survival, conservation organizations and government agencies have implemented various protection measures. The species is listed on Appendix I of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species Sites, which prohibits international commercial trade. Regional governments have collaborated on conservation action plans, recognizing that Kouprey protection requires international cooperation across their historical range. These plans address habitat protection, anti-poaching measures, and population survey efforts. Protected areas have been established in former Kouprey habitats, including national parks and wildlife reserves in Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, and Thailand. While these areas may no longer harbor Kouprey populations, they preserve habitat that could support reintroduction efforts if any populations are rediscovered. Various survey expeditions have been mounted since the 1990s, using increasingly sophisticated techniques, including camera traps, environmental DNA sampling, and acoustic monitoring. These efforts have aimed to detect any remaining populations that might have escaped previous detection. Ex situ conservation efforts, including attempts to maintain genetic material in zoos and research institutions, have faced challenges due to the lack of living specimens. Some institutions have preserved tissue samples and genetic material from historical specimens, which could potentially contribute to future conservation efforts if assisted reproductive technologies advance efficiently. The search continues, hope and uncertainty. The question of Kouprey survival remains one of conservation biology's greatest mysteries. While no confirmed sightings have occurred since 1969, the vast and often inaccessible nature of Southeast Asian forests means that small populations could theoretically persist undetected. Remote sensing technology and improved survey methods continue to offer hope for rediscovery. Camera trap networks, drone surveys, and environmental DNA analysis represent modern tools that could potentially detect Kouprey presence even if direct sightings remain elusive. Local communities continue to report occasional sightings of large, cattle-like animals in remote forest areas. While these reports require scientific verification, they maintain hope among conservationists that isolated populations might survive in the region's most remote locations. The discovery of new species and rediscovery of species thought extinct provides precedent for optimism. Several Southeast Asian mammals have been rediscovered after decades without confirmed sightings, suggesting that the Kouprey story might not yet be concluded. International cooperation between research institutions, conservation organizations, and regional governments continues to support search efforts. These collaborations bring together resources, expertise, and local knowledge that maximize the chances of detecting any surviving populations. Ecological impact and ecosystem role. The potential loss of the Kouprey represents more than just the extinction of a single species. It signifies a disruption of ecological relationships that evolved over thousands of years. Large herbivores like the Kouprey serve crucial roles as ecosystem engineers, influencing plant community structure through their grazing and browsing activities. Kouprey grazing patterns help maintain the grassland ecosystems that support numerous other species. Their selective feeding created habitat heterogeneity that benefited smaller herbivores, ground-nesting birds, and invertebrate communities adapted to grassland environments. The species' role in seed dispersal contributed to forest regeneration and plant genetic flow across landscapes. Large mammals can transport seeds over considerable distances, facilitating plant reproduction and maintaining genetic diversity within plant populations. Their presence influenced predator-prey dynamics, supporting populations of large carnivores, such as tigers and leopards that historically inhabited the same regions. The loss of large prey species creates cascading effects throughout food webs, potentially contributing to further ecosystem degradation. The ecological niche occupied by Koupreys remains largely unfilled, as no other large herbivore species in the region exhibits exactly the same habitat preferences and feeding behaviors. This represents a permanent alteration of ecosystem function that extends far beyond a direct loss of the species itself. Lessons for conservation. The Kouprey's plight offers crucial lessons for wildlife conservation efforts across Southeast Asia and beyond. The species decline illustrates how quickly large mammal populations can collapse when facing multiple simultaneous threats, emphasizing the importance of proactive rather than reactive conservation strategies. The international nature of the Kouprey's historical range highlights the necessity of transboundary cooperation in conservation efforts. Species that cross national boundaries require coordinated management approaches that transcend political divisions. The role of local communities in conservation has become increasingly apparent through Kouprey conservation efforts. Community-based conservation programs that integrate traditional knowledge with scientific approaches offer the most promising paths forward for protecting remaining wildlife populations. Early intervention represents perhaps the most important lesson from the Kouprey experience. By the time the species was recognized as critically endangered, population numbers had already fallen too low for effective recovery programs to succeed. Future directions and hope. While the immediate future of the Kouprey remains uncertain, the species continues to influence conservation efforts across Southeast Asia. Research techniques developed during Kouprey surveys have improved methods for studying other elusive species, contributing to broader conservation science. Habitat restoration efforts in former Kouprey Range areas benefit numerous other species, creating conservation value even if the target species cannot be recovered. These restored ecosystems support biodiversity conservation and ecosystem service provision for local communities. Educational programs using the Kouprey as a flagship species continue to raise awareness about conservation needs throughout the region. The species serves as a powerful symbol for the importance of protecting Southeast Asian biodiversity before additional losses occur. Advances in reproductive biology and genetic technologies may eventually offer options for Kouprey recovery if genetic material can be preserved and if any living populations are discovered. While such technologies remain experimental, they represent potential tools for future conservation efforts. The Kouprey story ultimately serves as both a cautionary tale and an inspiration for conservation action. Whether this magnificent wild ox still roams the forests of Southeast Asia remains unknown, but its legacy continues to drive efforts to protect the region's remaining wildlife heritage. In honoring the Kouprey as Cambodia's national animal, we acknowledge both our responsibility to protect natural heritage and our hope that future generations might yet encounter this forest giant in its native habitat. The search for the Kouprey continues, embodying humanity's enduring hope that we have not yet lost all the wild spaces and wild creatures that make our planet remarkable. in the dense forests and remote grasslands of Southeast Asia. The possibility remains that somewhere, perhaps a morning mist or fading twilight, a small herd of Koupreys still moves silently through their ancient territory, carrying with them the wild heart of a region that has seen so much change yet retains a power to surprise us with its secrets.